Last week, we began our Staying Power series. How well can these teams close out the cycle? Today, we're looking at FSU and the top prospects you see on your screen here. The Noles are currently 8th in the team recruiting rankings, but they haven't finished with a top 10 class since 2017. Does Florida State have what it takes to break that streak in 2024? Zack Blostein of Noles 24/7 is here to answer that question. Zack, thanks for joining us. We'll start with here. FSU has 11 commitments in the 2024 class. That's headlined by five-star tight end Landon Thomas, who they flipped from Georgia. Now, Mike Norvell's staff has been beating the nation's top programs for some of these recruits. What do you make of the recruiting success they're having so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's been pretty impressive, but I think, the main culprit of it is that Mike Norvell and his staff have had a lot of time to cultivate relationships. I mean, they've been at this, now this is year 4 for Norvell and his staff, and, they've been able to visit these high school prospects for multiple years now. I mean, you mentioned Landon Thomas. He's a guy that they had committed all the way back in his freshman year. That was in 2021. He obviously had decommitted and then committed to Georgia and then actually flipped back this spring. But he's a guy that they've had a relationship with for, dating back to all the way back to 2021. So, I don't know, if they would have been able to pull that off if not for that long-standing relationship. And I think that's what Mike Norvell really stresses to these prospects, is building those true, genuine relationships. And I think that's starting to pay off for him and his staff.
Zach, Florida State is looked as transfer U, and they've brought in 23 transfers over the last 2 cycles. A lot of those prospects have made immediate impacts, and that, of course, limits the amount of high schoolers that you can take in every cycle. But what do you make of their method, and do you feel like maybe they could be changing back towards taking more high schoolers on the recruiting trail?
Yeah, I think in a normal scenario, they'd like to be recruiting the high school ranks more often than taking a bunch of transfers in. But I think the transfer portal pretty much saved them, right? It allowed them to kind of garner an amount of talent that I don't think they would have been able to just solely recruiting the high school ranks. And it made it possible for them to, rebuild their roster. They had 2 not so great seasons in Mike Norvell's first 2 years on campus. And then obviously this past year they go 10-3. And I think the primary reason for that's why they're called Transfer Portal U. Mike Norvell is the king of the transfer portal. And he's just done such a great job at recruiting guys through the portal. But, they want to put a more of an emphasis on high school recruiting. I think you're seeing that more in this 2024 recruiting class. And I would expect that to continue to trend that way in the years to come.
Now, FSU's 11 commits, a little bit on the lower side, but part of what goes into being able to stay in the top 10 is having highly rated targets still on the board who are interested in your program. Who are some of the names fans should keep an eye on that Florida State is actively pursuing?
Yeah, I think that the number one guy to know is Charles Lester. He's a 5-star defensive back out of Riverview in Sarasota, Florida. FSU's been involved with him from the start. Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, and Colorado are the other top competition for Lester. But he could decide at any time. And right now, I think FSU leads for him. He's gone on record saying that multiple times to us and other reporters in recent months. And, I think he could probably take his recruitment the distance, but if signing day were today, I would expect him to end up in FSU's class. And then JoJo Trader, he's probably Florida State's top remaining wide receiver target on the board. They already have 4 receivers committed in their 2024 class, but landing Trader would pretty much be icing on the cake. He's a guy that's electric, can, catch jump balls, pretty much do everything. You guys see his stats right there, but yeah, really impressive prospect. They're going to have to beat out Miami, which is the hometown school for him, down there at Chaminade Madonna in Hollywood, Florida. But yeah, he's a guy that FSU absolutely wants to land, and they'll probably get him on campus for an official visit this summer. The last guy I'll note, Kylan Fox. Yeah, Kylan Fox, 4-star tight end out of Grayson in Georgia. He's visiting Florida State this weekend, actually, and I expect him to make a decision sometime within the next month. I like where Florida State sits right now, and he'd be a nice compliment to a guy you guys mentioned earlier, 5-star Landon Thomas. And the 2 are actually really close friends. They'll both be on campus this weekend as Thomas looks to add Fox to this class.
A lot of good names there, obviously, for Florida State, and they're pacing for maybe their best class in the last decade. But if they didn't get there, Zach, if they didn't finish inside the top 10 nationally, what would be some potential roadblocks for Coach Norvell and company?
Yeah, I think you got to look at the other two in-state schools, right? I think both of those coaching staffs are prioritizing high school recruiting more than pretty much anybody. And Billy Napier's formed a staff that has a lot of manpower, and they're going and getting after it. They've done an excellent job recruiting the high school ranks. And as we all know, Mario Cristobal, if he's known for one thing, it's his recruiting success. And he's a guy that obviously had Miami with a top 10 or so class last year. And, I think they could be pretty tough obstacles for Florida State, as they're all three of those schools are involved on a lot of the similar recruits in the state.
Well, Zach, now that we've looked at the potential prospects left on the board and maybe potential obstacles, why don't you give us the verdict here? Do you think Florida State has the staying power to finish the 2024 cycle in the top 10?
I do. I think they do have the staying power. Finally, right? It's been a while since Florida State's been in that conversation in the high school ranks. We talked about their success in the portal, but I think 2024 is the year for them. They've got on the field success, in the books, right, with the 2022 season. The 2023 season is looking even better for them with all the guys they added through the portal and the guys they maintained on their roster, like Jordan Travis and Jared Verse. And they're going to use that to sell to high school recruits over the next year or so, leading up to signing day. And, the guys I mentioned earlier, Fox, Lester, and Trader, among, a ton of other guys that they're in on, I think they're going to be well suited for a top 10 class come December or February, whenever we're taking count.
All right, great insight from our guy, Zach. Thanks for joining us. And for more of his reporting, for more FSU football and recruiting news, be sure to check out Noles247.com for all the latest updates.